Hello magical souls, it is Niina. You're watching Fairy Chamber channel. This video is going to be about witch hunts in Finland and in Sweden. And I find this topic very interesting, and largely because I'm very fascinated about the way these whole witch hunt phenomena spread around Europe and then in America in 16th century and created massive hole to humankind. And it was all started in the 15th century by educated men, and how much harm it caused overall into this in the world, and how massive what's the word, sequences that had for humankind, and the way people still see witches today within Europe, especially people who come from Abrahamic religions. Anyway, this is a topic that I find very interesting, especially the way witch hunts were happening within Finland and in Sweden. Especially in Finland, because we had very strong past that is very much based on shamanism and witchcraft as the belief for supernatural was a norm in Finnish life, but the whole practice of shamanism in that strong sense, it was till the late Middle Ages. It pretty much had vanished before the witch hunt started in Sweden, and later on in Finland as well. In 1597, King James of England and Scotland, he wrote down to his notes that there are the most powerful witches, they live in Orkney Islands and in Shetland Islands and in Lapland of Finland. And James might had a point there, and maybe also personal experience, because his wife Anne was a Danish princess and he had done a trip to Nordic countries, and maybe he had witnessed some shamanism during these trips. The first witch hunts in Sweden started in 1666, and Finland was part of Sweden during that time, so there wasn't Finland in that sense, it was just the eastern part of Sweden. So when I speak about witch hunts in Finland and in Sweden, I refer to the areas of Finland and Sweden, and these started in Åland. Let's see if I can find a map for you. So Åland is this tiny island here. It's much bigger in my map, it's really much smaller. Personally, I think that witch hunts of Sweden and Finland started in Åland. It's not really a surprise, because an Iceland is always a close community. And the first witch that was burned in the... well, I don't know, was she burned? No, she was burned. Checking my notes here. Was called Karin Persdotter. Karin, daughter of Persdotter. And she lived in village of Karby in 16... I can't say that. Fucking English. In the 17th century. In the 60s of the 17th century. And she was a very poor woman. And Åland of those times, like you saw in the map, it was like Iceland between Finland and Sweden. And it was like a stopping place for the ships when they went from Turku to Stockholm. And Stockholm, of course, was the capital of Sweden, and Turku was the old capital of Finland, but it was like the capital of the eastern part of Sweden, like we would call it in those times. So Karin was the first witch that was burned in Sweden, or in Sweden and in Finland. And she was a very poor woman, and she was always asking people to give her things. How do you call that kind of person? She was a beggar. And she used to steal things from other people, and then she would sell these things to other people without them knowing where they came from. And she was also quite sick lady, and she had a third eye and magical abilities. She would divinate for people, and her husband was also a beggar, so they were like beggar couple. And if people became sick, they would go to her, and she would tell them what to do, or see the cause of the sickness and tell which herbs to use and so on. So I don't think she was all bad, but then hard to say, and I don't really know the facts about her. First trigger within the witch hunts was that there was these 8 sacks of rye stolen, and in those times that was a huge amount of food. And the lady who was in charge of the rye, her name was Maria, she was getting all the blames for that, but in reality I guess it was Karin who stole them, and she thought that neighbor was the guilty person, and so the neighbor gets really mad, and she goes to meet the judge. And judge was called Niels Seelander, and what I read, he seems a lot like Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Extremely Britain man, and he saw that Karin Spersdotter, if he would put her behind bars, he would get more recognition in his career, and he was really into killing witches. He was really into witch hunting, so to speak, and he had got lots of experience from that, from Denmark and in Norway, which were like countries that had lots of witch trials. So the witch trials, their golden age had already passed. That's horrible to say. The golden age of witch trials, anyway, had already passed when it came to Finland and Sweden in the quite late in 17th century. The massive amount of witch hunts in other parts of Europe, they had already gone down a bit, and in America as well. But things go a bit late to the periphery. So Karin was accused for being a witch, and then she started to tell stuff about her connection with Satan, and that she loves to visit Blåkulla, which was a witches' Sabbath in Swedish, and that they would go to the top of the mountain and have massive witch festivals there, and having fun with the devil. And she was like telling all these to this Niels Seelander. I guess she knew that no matter what she says, she's going to be burned either way. So she was doomed to death in 8th of August in 1666. And in Holland, the law of Moses was in: do not let witch woman to live. I think it's like that, or is it like do not let witch to live? I don't know. Anyway, in Finland, this was like the first trigger for the witch hunts. So the witch hunts that spread to Finland from Holland, they mostly happened in western Finland and in southern Finland, but it wasn't really that much about breaking like church laws. It was more about criminal laws. And usually the reasons for witchcraft or blaming other person for being a witch. And those of you who are familiar with like Salem witch trials or witch trials in Middle Europe or in the UK, you are probably aware that in most cases the reason to tell judge or the priest that someone is a witch was jealousy. So this is something that happened in Finland and in Sweden as well. These were the cause of the witch hunts: jealousy and being envy or holding grudge towards some other person. Karen, she told names of 16 other women who were with her in the witch Sabbath, and I guess she did not like this woman whose name she gave, and this did not use torture on her, but more mental torture than physical torture. But then when it came to the next witches, they were tortured illegally, and they were forced to tell 2 names, and then the 2 names that the 2 people that were now like next on the list, they were forced to tell 2 names, and it went on and on and on. So in Åland 7 women were beheaded between 1666 and 1670, but most often the people only got fines or they were told to leave the village. Like those were the most common punishments for practicing witchcraft. And after killing, the bodies were burnt, and that was like a common entertainment, which now of course feels very grotesque for us. But it was more a manipulation. This is what is going to happen to you if you play with witchcraft, or if you worship Satan, or I would say if you tell the judge that your neighbor is a witch. That's what is going to happen to you and the neighbor. I believe it has been extremely frightful atmosphere to live when you don't know who to trust and who are your friends. Because in those times, in 17th century, both in Finland and in Sweden, folk magic, it was a norm, and so belief the supernatural was a norm. And even though people were like Christians on paper, they might not really understand the concept of Christianity that much. And this whole especially in Finland, this whole concept of like this Western idea of witches flying with broomsticks and going to witch Sabbaths, we didn't have that. In Finland, witch was someone still having this very shamanistic position of a spiritual healer or a guide, a white light witch. But then this whole concept of witch being usually a woman flying with a broomstick and having a black cat, that started in these Åland witch hunts and witch trials, and that came from Sweden, and to Sweden it came from Norway and Denmark, and those countries from France and Germany and Middle Europe. So it's really creepy. And like I said, in Finland and in Sweden it was mostly the folk magic that people used to like pray that their crop would be good, or that children would be healthy, like doing that kind of folk magic and chanting and spells. That was really a norm for people. But then when in a close community your neighbor sees that, oh, our crops is dying, their crops is doing well, I just really hate that person, because they get to live, we don't get to live. And then just giving their names to the judge. Or it could be even more simple, love troubles, or some kind of just not liking someone. That's very common reason to give their names to the judges. So that's the way which trials spread, and it's a really dark period in history of humankind. So in Finland from 16th century to 18th century, about 2,000 men and women were accused for being witches, but overall about 100 people were killed in Finland, and most of them were men, and also in Iceland and many in Sweden as well. This all had to do with the shamanistic tradition where shaman was a man. This whole concept of Western witch being most of the time a woman, this was quite alien for people living in Finland, Sweden and Iceland. During history there were tens of thousands of people killed within witch hunts. It's really a dark time in the history of humankind, and I don't know, sometimes people seem to think that witch hunts were part of Middle Ages, but no, they really weren't. Like 15th century, that was like early Renaissance, and all the way to the 18th century where people started to become more enlightened. Isn't that called the era of enlightened? But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I hope this won't give you any nightmares, so I'll see you on my next video. Bye! Thank you for watching. If you're interested to learn more about Finnish mythology and folklore and ancient customs and beliefs, I have an 8-week online course called The Heart of Mielikki, which is a deep dive into the world of Finnish mythology and all the different deities and legends. You can find more information about it on my website, fairychamber.com, and I will also add the links to the description. Have a great day, make good choices, and I will see you next time. Bye!